So here in the Northwest, we have fires. We have fires on the West Coast. California is on fire. Oregon's on fire. Washington's on fire. There are fires about 30 to 35 miles or closer east of us. The winds whipped them up a week ago and really spread them like crazy. My mother had to evacuate her home in Gates. Lots of her neighbors' homes didn't make it. Hers did, from what she told me. But I know of at least a couple of people up there that I know who lost their homes. Just one day they're there and the next, they're gone. So that's pretty crazy. And the air quality index here in Salem is like over 500. It's insane. It's like we have the worst air in the world in Oregon. And I'm sure California is similar, parts of Washington similar. It's just kind of crazy. Hey, this is Tim Patterson. It's Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. And yes, the year that is 2020 continues. And you can find us online at TradeshowGuy.net. Got a lot of other websites, which I've listed from time to time on this show, but that's the one place you can find everything that we do, from the exhibits to the books I've written to a couple of freebies to webinars, and also I post the video version of this vlog as well as audio version of the podcast all there every week. TradeshowGuy.net. So that's the way it kind of is with the fire and everything, and I hopefully we're supposed to get some rain in the next couple of days. We'll see if that helps. It's been cooler. So we'll just see. Meanwhile, moving along, I got a chance to catch up with a guy that I met, 15 years or more, CEO of gDiapers, Jason Graham-Nye, who is a client a long time back, early company that I got into the industry in interpretive exhibits. We actually cold called them, one of their people, and we ended up selling them an exhibit, a second exhibit we did a few years later. And they would do a lot of Expo West shows, Natural Products Expo West. And at one point they got out because they just determined for whatever reason they weren't getting back what they needed from the show. Their cycle of their product, which was flushable diapers, disposable, all that stuff, earth-friendly, had moved on, and they had a lot of what they needed out of the show. But I hadn't really talked to him about it. I know he moved to Australia 5 years ago because he'd moved up from Australia, planted the company headquarters in Portland, and then they moved out, and we hadn't really talked a whole lot. We hadn't done any business with them, and I thought, you know what, we're Facebook friends. Let me just send him a quick note. We got connected. I said, hey, you want to join me? And he said, sure. So we had a great conversation, learned a lot about what they have been going through, and yes, the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected their business in interesting ways, and they've had to shift and pivot like a lot of other people and do some things they weren't expecting to do, but upbeat guy, great guy. This is how that conversation went. I think you'll enjoy it. I want to welcome Jason Graham-Nye, CEO of gDiapers, a former client of ours here at Trade Show Guy Exhibit, to Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. Jason, really good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you going?
It's been an interesting year. As they say, the old expression, may you live in interesting times. I think that was meant to be a bit of an insult, but or a curse, I'm not sure. Anyway, just kind of will explore a little bit. I know that we met, I'm going to say 15 years ago. gDiapers was headquartered in the U.S. in Portland, and I met one of your folks. Actually, it was kind of a cold call. It's rare to sell an exhibit on a cold call, but I don't remember how it worked, but we ended up doing some business, did an exhibit or two. You did a lot of trade show marketing. So let's start with gDiapers, and how are you guys doing right now?
Yeah, if we take a quick step back in time,
Yes.
we're from Sydney, Australia, and we had a son 18 years ago yesterday.
Oh my
and
goodness.
When that happened, we read a statistic that there was 1 cup of oil in a disposable diaper, and that diapers took 500 years to biodegrade. And we thought that was crazy. And we found some interesting IP for a plastic-free diaper alternative. So we moved to Portland, Oregon. We raised capital and we launched a business, gDiapers. And we knew that, consumer-facing business, we had to get in front of customers and in front of retailers to sell to customers. And it's been a remarkable 15 years from where retailers gone. So when we moved to America, there was a thing called Whole Foods and there was a thing called Wild Oats. And we thought, we've got to get in there. And how do we do that? And it's like, well, we've got to get in front of buyers. We've got to get in front of UNFI, the distributor. So that whole ecosystem, which was new to us, right? We're foreigners in America. How are we going to do that? So trade shows were a very big part of the equation for us. And so we met you, and you built a couple of amazing booths for us, which were incredible. And it was funny because we don't come from the industry. So I just remember very clearly those trade shows, small ones, big ones, all the trade-offs of how big's that booth, I remember rocking up to Expo West one year and our neighbor, their booth hadn't arrived. So I think we managed to help them build something from nothing. Like it was crazy. But, and that was really the heyday when retail, physical retail was a massive, massive thing. And in those 15 years, in our category in babies, Babies R Us, which was an absolute destination, 95% of mums and dads would have their registers there, their birth registry there for their gifts. And so they're bankrupt now.
Right.
Amazon has come into the category and rearranged the whole thing. And we knew it was getting disrupted when the buyer of Walmart called us and said, listen, what are we going to do about this thing called Amazon? And I thought, mate, if you don't know, we are so screwed.
Yeah, right.
So, over time, we pulled back on trade shows as the business went more online. And maybe that was a mistake, I'm not sure. But in our category, subscription is massive. You're a parent for 3 years. You're a parent of a diaper wearing child for 3 years, and getting that product every week on subscription is a pretty big and convenient innovation that Amazon and everyone else does. So just the way we were getting to consumers changed fundamentally, which is when, the trade show part of it fell away a little bit. I think it was quite expensive, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But what was really good, and I'll fast forward to where we are now, we've got a pandemic, we've got a product that shares the same raw materials as face masks. So we have a significant break in our supply chain. So we won't be able to get product into the US for about 6 or 8 months. So we had to make this heartbreaking decision to close our US business as of August 31. So very recently. And, we have team members who've been with us for 10, 12 years.
Right.
So that was brutal. But our last all-team meeting last Friday, we went through what are the great memories, and the trade shows were one of the big memories. I was sitting there, it was just such a vibe. It was so much fun. So I feel like the trade show, obviously the main goal is to get in front of retailers and consumers, but the other massive thing was the culture building thing. Like it was so much fun. It was so tiring, but so much fun getting in front of retailers like that. And then the nights and having dinners and drinks with retail people, and a big customer comes along and it's like, oh my God, they want to stock our product. This is great.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, it was a real good vibe.
Yeah, trade shows are a great vibe, but they're like this crazy marathon sprint that lasts about 3 or 4 days, as well as all the prep that goes up to it, and then the post, the follow up and all that stuff. But it is a nutty way. But the advantage, of course, is that you meet a lot of people in a short amount of time, and if you meet the right people, boy, it can do wonders for your business. It can get you into stores, get you into retailers. But you say it's changed so much now. You're doing a lot of online subscription stuff, so that doesn't surprise me, because it's a product you need regularly for a short amount of time.
And I think we are so focused on plastic free. We're so focused on being a genuine differentiator from our competitors who have plastic, and so we've really moved into it's a direct to consumer model, and where we're getting traction in Europe is this full service. So we sell product to parents, we collect the product, we compost the product, and we sell the compost. Now that's a very different sales cycle, and it's taken time. You've got to deal with some waste regulations, but the mayor of Paris, she's committed to this. She's given an exemption to the waste codes that we need to do this trial. We've identified a distributed composting partner, so they're composting all around Paris. And, the EU's got a new waste directive that's all around the circular economy and all around how do you turn waste into a resource. And so that makes for a very different business model. We're almost, the 32 boroughs of London spend £15 million a year just on plastic diaper waste. So we have boroughs working with us. So that's interesting. So it'll be like Multnomah County being our partner, and Multnomah County going to their residents and saying, hey, residents who use diapers, use this product, and we'll deliver it to you and collect it and compost it and sell the compost. So we're dislocating away from retail quite significantly, because honestly, Tim, it's just been, whether it was Walmart in the physical retail or Amazon, dealing with them as customers are just brutal. We had an experience where Amazon owed us $100,000 for about 2 years.
Oh, God.
And the way they're structured is there's no human being on the other side. None. And it was only because the guy that did our G logo happened to be an Aussie who was quite senior at Amazon that we finally got a human being to talk to. And they said, yeah, we do owe you 100,000. Sorry.
Jesus.
And the funniest end of that story was they said, we'll wire you the money. That didn't work. Then we said, we'd send you a check. And I thought, you're Amazon. Then they said, here's our credit card number. Take it from that. So we did. And then they wired us. So for about 3 weeks, we had twice as much money.
Oh my God.
And so the shoe was on the other foot. It was just this glorious 3 weeks where we're getting an email every day saying, please pay us back. And I'm like, oh, really?
Oh, really? Yeah, that's right. We'll get to it. It's on our list.
Very busy. I'm so busy.
We'll figure it out soon.
Yeah. So we found through environmental consumer products, it's very, very hard to cut through. You need huge amounts of capital. And unfortunately, the level of greenwashing is such that you've got a very confused customer base. Right. And that's been very frustrating. So we're sort of looking at, in a world of pandemics, we've got a new product line, a new product as a service, which we think means we can guarantee that, we want that waste back because we can turn it into a resource. That's super important to us, but it means who is our customer? Like the whole thing's kind of different,
Is that the G cycle that I saw mentioned? The G cycle. So you're actually from bottom to end. You're kind of taking over that whole chain, whatever you want to describe that as, and you have to work with all these local and regional and country municipalities to make all this happen. That's nutty. That's really nutty. I bet you never anticipated you were getting into something like that.
No, but I just think having been in the business 15 years and watching how the bigger players kind of dance around regulations and, are a bit loose with the truth around product claims. We just want to be that brand that really does what it says it's going to do. And, we have pilots running here in Australia where it's a multi-stakeholder thing. So we sell the diaper. Veolia, the waste management company, collects the diaper. The city of Hobart does the composting, and they sell the compost for $75 a cubic meter. So they capture that revenue. But it's an epic story. Like, God, if we could do that around the world. Yeah. So the focus is Paris and London at the moment. The EU is very much going in that direction. But the other part, local to us, is so we're in the Pacific, obviously, and in the South Pacific, we have islands like Fiji and Vanuatu, and they're 50, 100 years away from of submerging, and they'll have the first environmental refugees in the world. So the island of Tuvalu, they create 1 million nappies, 1 million diapers a year through 200. They have 250 families, the whole country, and they go through about 1 million diapers a year.
Wow.
So we're working on putting G-Cycle in there as a way to just demonstrate what's possible. Vanuatu, so these islands are sort of like our Hawaiis, right? This is where we go for holidays, and obviously the pandemic's devastated them. But they're rich indigenous communities, and this plastic diaper waste is just crushing them. So Vanuatu has banned disposable diapers as of December. Like, they're done. Because every time you're a tourist and you're on the reef diving and you see a disposable diaper floating by, that's one more reason to never come back to that island. And so
it's one more tourist who's got a bad story to tell.
Yeah. So we've got a developing country strategy with those islands and a developed country strategy with sort of France and England at the moment. But that's sort of where we are.
Well, that just covers so many bases. And I was curious to talk to you about the business, obviously, and there's things you're doing that I hadn't even anticipated that you're doing. And probably, 10 years ago, you weren't really anticipating all of that either. So are there, you say you're not in the US at this point in time. Do you, just because of the pandemic that just kind of closed things down and the supply chain, as you mentioned. So how do you anticipate like the next 3 to 6 months to a year unfolding with US as well as the other countries?
So what we found over the years is the product is one thing, but the other thing that sort of was built was the community. So we have about 200,000 mums and dads on a Facebook page. And we thought in this downtime, we just make sure we keep that community engaged and close, because parenting is a very isolating thing, particularly in those younger years. And especially we found in the US, we felt like you typically might move from your hometown to maybe college or a job, and you just spread out, which is funny. When we lived there, like we watched Thanksgiving, and it's like, oh my God, the entire country jumps on planes and flies to wherever they're from.
Right.
Like, Jesus, which, our country's as big as America, but our population is 25 million. Like,
Right.
we don't travel that much.
Less than
But
10%, right.
yeah. So where was I going with that story? Oh, so the community is so important. So we've started we're doing Facebook Live every day, and really we like this notion of it takes a village to raise a parent. The normal phrase is it takes a village to raise a child, but we think it takes a village to raise a parent, and it's an experience that is at once universal and also very personal. So that's quite a paradox, and it can be quite discombobulating. And so we're doing more interaction with our community. We're a diaper company with no diapers, but we're still a community. And I've just started a thing called Dad's Giving Birth, because I had this very funny conversation with a couple of mates a few weeks ago about how we don't ever talk about what that was like, that moment that your partner gave birth, and just the logistics of it, but also the more philosophical, like, oh my God, your partner just created life. Jesus.
Right. And now I've got a new responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. And in our culture, like, I think the main game is the woman giving birth, which is great, but it's just, there's just funny 5-10 minute conversations with fathers talking about, so how was it for you? What was that transition like from manhood to dadhood? And that's a transition that you can't go back from. And some parts of you fall away and then other parts emerge. So as a diaper company, it gets a bit philosophical, but it's interesting, and we think it's a good way of keeping the community together. And I think dads in the conversation are really important, because they're often not part of the conversation at all.
Yeah. I'm a dad. I've got kids, as we mentioned in the green room, 20 and 28 now. And I remember those days of when they were 1, 2, 3 and learning to crawl and bump into walls and do all that. You never forget that. And I remember hearing at that time, you never know how much your parents love you until you become a parent yourself. And I think that's very true. And there's so much involved in that. You're right. We can get philosophical on that, but it's great to have that conversation and to know that you're building communities, even though you've got no products right now. So do you anticipate, how is Australia doing with the pandemic? Are they handling it well? I don't see much news about it. Obviously the US is so nutty.
We're lucky because we're an island. We have a government that we're quite socialist, so we've been able to financially redeploy dollars into JobKeeper and JobSeeker, which is the programs like the payroll protection program you have. So that's salvaged a lot of people. There's still massive economic questions about how do we open safely. Because we're an island, things like international travel is kind of important. And, Qantas is our major carrier, and they're saying they're not putting a plane in the sky for another 2 years. Tourism is important to us. That's devastated. But our 3 biggest industries are mining, inbound education, and tourism. So inbound education, meaning we get a lot of foreign students coming into Australia to our universities, and they pay top dollar to study here because it's the lifestyle. That's all gone.
Wow.
And so there's big questions, structural questions about how we recover from this. So the top of the 3 top, mining's still there, but the education piece is not there, and either is the tourism. So there's big questions, but we do have very strong socialized medicine. So, it's Medicare for all sort of thing. It's kind of Obamacare on steroids. So that's really helpful. We don't have a system where employment and healthcare are tied together. So if you lose your job, you've still got free healthcare. So that's huge. And it's really been weird. We lived in America for 10 years and living in a different system and coming home and then reflecting on it during a pandemic, you're like, Jesus, like that's huge. Like you lose your job, you lose your healthcare, like, and there's no net, like, so Australia is doing okay. We have had 500 deaths. We had 100 deaths for the longest time and had just knocked this thing off. And then one mistake in the state south of us. So inbound tourism, inbound returners, travellers, they'd come in, they'd go to a hotel under security from the federal police. Like they'd literally be taken off the plane with the federal police into a hotel, 14 days quarantine, done. In one state, they used a private contractor. And this is a bizarre thing, Tim, to say on a podcast conversation, but the security guards in this couple of hotels in Victoria decided to sleep with the people who were in quarantine, and that launched that city, Melbourne, south of us, is in total shutdown.
Oh,
So
geez.
it's the weirdest thing. And there's a whole political thing where the Premier of the state is a Labor guy, so he's a Democrat. And in our system, Democrats here are union,
Right.
which is great. I mean, they're pro-workers and what have you. But he gave jobs for the boys. He gave the contract to a mate of his security company. And they were sleeping with the people in the hotel. And then that's how you take a virus and you spread it through the community. So there's a huge inquiry going on. So don't ever think that America's the only one with crazy politics.
Right.
It happens everywhere.
I'm sure it happens
Politicians
everywhere.
are bastards.
Cool. Jason, always good to catch up with you. We need to do it more often. And I love to see your posts on Facebook of your kids surfing and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of fun. Are you a surfer still, or?
I do a bit of body surfing, but yeah, my younger son's very good, and we love being around the water. But yeah, no, it's great catching up with you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks so much.
And thanks again to Jason Graham-Nye of gDiapers for joining me on this week's Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. I really appreciate it. Had a fun conversation, Jason. Well, this week's one good thing, I have to say I'm a little wary of how they'll pull it up, but I'm glad to see the NFL back in action. I'm a big Seahawks fan, Seattle Seahawks, have been for years, and it'll be good to see Russell Wilson and the team back on the field. And, I know the NBA, when they came back in July and August, and now they're in the playoffs, they did it in the bubble in Orlando. I don't believe that that's what the NFL is doing, so I'm not sure. I haven't really followed it closely to know exactly how they're doing it. I just was watching a little bit here a minute ago. I'm recording this a day before, and they are playing a game, but there's no audience there, so the audience is at home, like here. Be curious to see how they do, and I wish them well. So yeah, I'm glad to see the NFL back this week. This week's one good thing. Have yourself a great week, and let's do it all again next Monday here on the Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. I'm Tim Patterson. Thanks for joining me.